We're harvesting hope. Have you ever thought about that? What do you harvest? You harvest something that you planted long ago. You planted seeds with your lives. This is a critical time in our Earth's history where we have lots of challenges. And the Pope recognized that in 2015 and decided to write this letter to everyone, this encyclical. And he said this: believers themselves must constantly feel challenged to live in a way consonant with their faith and not to contradict it by their actions. They need to be encouraged to be ever open to God's grace and to draw constantly from their deepest convictions about love, justice, and peace. He was very strong. And a good reason. We have had lots of things even since then, and we've all seen them in different parts of the United States. The fires, the flooding, the heat. I think Texas has a lot of heat, right? I think, man. And I won't go into all the nuances of what's going on, but this has caused a lot of risk in different countries in different variety of ways, where they will be experiencing this even more than we are. I show you a map just to kind of prove that there are people studying these things, and this isn't a climate data thing, but just to show that we are already having some migration impacts and people moving due to significant events, which one could say, well, that's not climate change, but it's a significant event. And notice we don't have too many of them. We're not among the top ones, but also we're not as impacted initially, I think, as so many other countries. And I just want to point this out. When we start talking about the impact on peace, what could happen if you have migration? Migration away from where you don't want to live to where it would be better. This is an estimate by 2050 of the kind of, even with pessimistic and best case scenarios, how many people may be moving out of the areas because of impacts that are projected from climate change. Right now, we even have disasters that are moving us around now. We call disasters because it's not been consistent. We can't say it necessarily as all climate change, but it is something to be aware that a lot of people in the United States have moved places, and then what happens, it's not too bad, they just move back. But if that happens too many times, like my son who was living in San Francisco and had a lot of smoke for a while, he said, you know what, I think I'm going to go up to Seattle. Well, Seattle wasn't, not necessarily as the best spot if you want to not be impacted by smoke either. So, and I had to put one graph up here. Don't get freaked out because you're not an engineer, but I like to look at things like this. Sea level is rising and it's being projected. And this is just a map that says if you're on the coast and you see the sea level rise, it gets to a point where it says, my home can't stand it anymore and I have to move. And so you move. The chances you'll move are 100% going up. So these impacts from climate change, from rising seas, from temperature, from excess precipitation, flooding, all those have these kind of increases in the likelihood of migration. And so migration is a big impact. It could have a big impact. Well, migration means people moving, migrants to other places. And we know how that goes sometimes, right? We're in Texas, after all. And so it's complicated and it does cause stress. It causes people to judge whether that's a good thing for their country. Have we thought through the process, et cetera? So how do you look at peace in this? We think of peace, well, that's, we're talking about the wars in, Gaza and the Ukraine. But there are minor wars going on right now at the border of the United States. There are wars beginning in Indiana. We're starting to war about what? There's not enough water under certain circumstances. And so these stressors are going to be challenging. This quote from Pope Francis, he came out with another letter. It's called an exhortation, which means he's really interested in having something for people to listen to. And he came out with this one called Praise God, Laudate Deum, a year ago on the anniversary of St. Francis's feast day. And he said this: there are no lasting changes without cultural changes, without a maturing of lifestyles and convictions within societies, and there are no cultural changes without personal changes. We've kind of been at war with the earth. Talk about lack of peace. We think of peace between peoples, but we're actually kind of been warring. You haven't thought about it that way, but we've kind of been putting the planet to a big test. And so if this is what we're supposed to do, bring this back to personal changes, Pope Francis asked us to undergo an ecological conversion. And conversion can happen in you can talk a lot about conversion, but it's a shift, it's a change in attitude. It's got a spiritual dimension because this awareness that the natural world is a reflection of God's creation. There's this idea of interconnectedness. In the folklore movement, we understand that. It's in our DNA. Also calls us to a change in lifestyle that can promote sustainability, a respect for life, and I would say this, all life, and a global perspective. And so just last year, in that new document, he asked that we all take this journey of ecological conversion and think of it as a pilgrimage of reconciliation to the planet, with the planet. And so this is my little map. I'm an engineer, so I like little diagrams to help me kind of focus on things. And you'll notice a couple of things. One is a pilgrimage. What do you think of when you go on a pilgrimage? Well, it's not going to be easy. It's not in a straight line down a straight street. There's going to be a thing that goes back and forth and sights unknown. There's going to be dangers. There's going to be things that trip you up. And this is no different. And so, because this is personal, I want us to take a little time to reflect on where our own journey is. And I like you to think of yourself as a river. Have you ever thought of yourself as a river? Well, the Pope has. Last year, this time, he came up with this little thing that I just love. Because I'm a river guy. I'm a water guy. I've been that guy for 40 years. We come together like so many streams, brooks, and rivulets, merging finally in a mighty river to irrigate the life of our marvelous planet and our human family for generations to come. Coming together. We understand that a bit, right? That's what we're about. Each one of these little rivers, where are you on this map? You're a river, you're a stream. You might be a religious congregation or a religious movement. So I want you to think of this with a little reflection. Is the water of action my flow continuously, or is it the flow intermittent, stagnant, or dried up? Have I caught up of action with enough energy and passion to begin to widen and deepen my impacts? Or have I allowed my actions to be constrained by my own inertia or the attitudes of those around me? Have I continued to act individually as a quiet, single, tiny stream, or have I made any effort to combine my water with other nearby streams to create a larger river? This is a tough one for me, too. It's a good examination of conscience. And so, what are the challenges we face on this pilgrimage? This pilgrimage of peacemakers, because that's the way we're going to become peaceful with the earth, is to make a change. What are some of these challenges? Well, I hear these are the ones I've come up with. One is just plain old inertia. It's easy for me to keep just doing what I've always done. Insignificance. What I do really doesn't matter. Resources. I don't have the time or the money to do it that way. Some bishops have told me that. Knowledge. I don't know where to start this environmental thing. I'm not an expert. Uncertainty. What does this have to do with my faith? Come on, you left-wing tree hugger. Authority. My local bishop, priest, imam, rabbi doesn't support it. What can I do? So we're going to have challenges. But you're not alone. Take a look to the right of you and left. There are companions you can kind of tag along with. And I want to tell you about one that I've been blessed to have the opportunity to help lead the last couple of years. It's called the Laudato Si Action Platform, and it's a Vatican-facilitated online initiative and community, and it's aimed to Catholics, but well beyond the Catholic Church. It's aimed for everyone to undergo this ecological conversion. And there are various sectors, including individuals, families, dioceses, parishes, religious congregations, universities, schools. No one gets off, even healthcare. But the aim is to really to begin to listen to this cry of the earth and the cry of the poor and the cry of our children and future generations. And the vision is this, is that as we know, if you do your own thing, but don't interact, there's a nice little pebble that drops in the water and it goes around and you may impact some area around you. Or if you do it separately, don't coordinate with each other, you can actually interfere with some of the good things you're doing because you don't know what you're doing and you're just tripping over each other. But this together, this wave can be created to make a big difference in a positive way. And so the value of this platform are a few things. First of all, we Catholics and others have really been good at talking the game. Yes, God will take care of the earth. Yeah, but what are you doing? You know, so you have to live what you believe. That's where credibility comes from. We become more effective when we act together. That's an obvious one, right? We also become more effective when we publicly commit to something. I'm going to do this by next Saturday. And then you get to Saturday and your friend calls you up. Hey, you didn't do that. Oh, you're right. You're also inspired locally by others who act globally. And there's also this sense of urgency that comes with this. What's happened in the last 2.5 years since we created this community? Rather amazing things have happened. First of all, the people who have signed up. We have over 200, close to 250 dioceses, nearly 6,000 parishes, over 5,000 individuals, families, 1,100 schools. In some countries, every single school signed up, single Catholic school signed up. Universities, 260 universities, religious communities, congregations. These total around 9,800 organizations that touch about 125 million people. Okay, we're getting there. There's a critical mass that's growing. Of course, we do have 1.3 billion Catholics to move to make things happen. But this is encouraging. What's going on? Well, we're getting together. We're setting some goals and we're having webinars every month with the goals kind of explained by experts. Every month we have between 400 and 1,200 people on the calls in about 6 languages. So how are you going to do it? Now the really interesting, what do you do? How's this come down to us? Well, there are goals. I won't get into every goal, but many of these have to do with your own motivation, being informed about how ecology actually is part of our faith and our spirituality, or education, learning about the earth. So we're not just winging it. We actually have some science and logic behind it. And our lifestyle. How's our lifestyle affecting this? And all of these goals are up to you. If you join this platform, they're flexible. You can set your own time period. and practice. I like this quote by Father Richard Rohr because I think it really says a lot. We do not think ourselves into new ways of living. We live ourselves into new ways of thinking. I've learned that in the Focolare. I've been changed by trying to put into practice the gospel in my everyday life, and that actually has had a major impact on my outlook. And I think the same thing happens with this. When we actually do things, we change ourselves. And how do we do it? Baby steps, right? You got an infant. My grandson, when he was 2 years old, he's wobbling, you're holding his hand, but at some point you're letting go and he gets going. So start small. I often think of it, I think I put this in Living City a year or two ago. How are we going to change direction? Well, I think of the rudder of a ship, right? Little tiny rudder, big ship. You turn the wheel and it turns the whole ship. So these little actions, just like these little acts of love, little acts of kindness, they make a big difference and they actually end up getting you to your own destination you're interested in. As a ship, you need to check the wind direction, right? You need to see what the atmosphere is, where you're living. You need to take an inventory of who you are. I'm not ready to go on this voyage. I'm sorry. I'll wait. What's your own personal outlook? And do you have the right stuff? Or maybe too much stuff you need to throw overboard before you take off, right? And do you surround yourself with, turn to your right, turn to your left, you surround yourself with people that inspire you and have the same vision. Peacemaking begins with things like these. Well, a few years ago, we put together something to respond to this, to join this program within the Focolare called the Eco Plan. And you can look it up and find out the beautiful ideas we've had. We have things like, hey, the refrigerator method. Everybody knows that, right? Stick something on the refrigerator. I'm going to live that today. That's really good for individuals, families. Or you might have universities who have their own plans, more involved. And this is a whole list. I don't have time to give you all of them, but the university sector has been doing amazing things. Everything from launching eco retreats to green living communities to secondhand stores and free food pantries. Really beautiful things for young people. And we've also developed over 1,000 resources to help dioceses, parishes, everyone to follow this, to become peacemakers for the planet. So, what's our role? What are we going to do in the future here? I'm wrapping up. Well, listening and dialogue, right? There's a lot of dialogue that happens, we know. I'm not talking about political polarization in this talk, but I have, and it's there. And it's really, I found, even when I dialogue with the other side, you can find something. The Republican senator of Indiana, he and I bonded over tree planting. He loves tree planting. Okay, let's start from there. Mindfulness and reflection, living the present moment. If you're walking through the life and you're not thinking about the trees or the presence of God, you're going to miss the boat, our boat that's sailing. That's a good part of this. And recognizing, I think more than anything this group does, we're all connected. This is one of the Pope's main themes of Laudato Si. We're all connected. That means I feel something. I now know someone in Oceania or Asia or South America that isn't being impacted. So the final two slides. Why? Why do we do this? Why do I care? I'm not going to be around. Earth is going to be fine. For me, this is why. Those are my children and grandchildren. And what I see as a scientist 40 years from now motivates me to try to do something now. It's like putting money in a bank account now, right? It grows. If you do something now, it has a multiplying effect. So I'll end with this final quote from Chiara Lubich, which I didn't even know she had said this up until a couple of years ago. And it's prophetic. Let's all read this together, all right? The health of the mystical body of humanity is peace, and the health of the cosmos is ecology. I have the impression that in the future, there will be a great ecological development in our movement because we have to save the natural environment. In the same way that one has to be alive and not dead in order to work at becoming a saint, so too must the planet be alive in order to provide a home for humanity. Our planet is essential for life to exist. Therefore, a healthy ecology is the foundation of peace. We can only build peace and brotherhood on a planet that exists. 1991. Thank you.